Georgia and Ole Miss getting ready for a huge showdown in Athens game day on campus already. A lot of news about Michigan, but this game's going to matter a lot to the national championship picture, just like everybody else. Both these teams can still win the national championship. I know that's, I think people are only thinking about Georgia, and that's fine. We can talk about that. Brock Bowers, Jim Harbaugh, there's Lane Kiffin. There's a lot going on this weekend, so stick with me on this one as we get ready. Ole Miss is about a 10 and a half, 10. It's going back and forth here a lot here lately at the end. Let's just call it 10 and a half or 10 point. Well, 10 and a half point dog in Athens. Look, I think it's going to be a tough one for Ole Miss. There's a lot of reasons why. Mainly, more than anything, I would say, they just don't. They're not playing well on the road. When you watch the Ole Miss and they definitely have a very good quarterback, a very good running back. Who, if he gets loose, you got some problems on your hands. They can dictate pace if you let them. Well, not let them. If they dictate pace on you with that back, you're going to have some problems on your hands. They have the number 34 rushing offense in the country. Honestly, with all of the teams that only run the ball, that's not that bad. It's something that you have to watch if you're Georgia. So they're going to have to contain him, Junkins. If they don't, then they're going to have a problem on their hands. That they have more of a run game than Georgia does. Now, Georgia's a little bit more predicated on the pass these days. That's fine. It looks like Brock Bowers is going to return. If you remember over at Dawg Post, this is something we talked about Thursday night. We don't know for sure, but I mean, it sure does appear that the projection is that he will play sooner than later. The Athens Banner Herald had some really good reporting on Friday afternoon, talking with his father about it, saying that it could be this weekend, it could be the one after that, or it could be, a while. So, but all indications for me are that he is likely to play soon. How soon? I don't know. I mean, if it's anything like this week at practice, particularly at the end of the week of practice, then I would expect him to play soon. But he's got to go through, the pregame warm up. You got to have nothing bad happen between now and then. And I just want to say this too about Brock Bowers in terms of everybody's made such a big deal about Brock Bowers not playing for Georgia against the Gators and against Missouri. And for me, I gotta say, I think that was a little bit overdone, or more than a little bit. I mean, Georgia should have still won those games. And, I think Brock is worth points, but I'm not sure that, considering how Georgia won both those games, certainly against the Gators, but again, even against Missouri, sort of by more than a touchdown. How much more does Brock bring to you there? I mean, does he bring another touchdown to that game? Maybe he might, but I mean, there's no question that he's a really good player. But sometimes I think that everybody grabs a hold of what's the easiest thing out there to talk about, and they talk about that thing. Brock Bowers is a really good player. I've been a Heisman voter for a long time. It would be hard for me to imagine not having him in my top 3. It's also hard to imagine him winning it for a lot of different reasons because he's not a quarterback, and that's just what that award has become these days. And these 2 games, could Brock Bowers win the Heisman? It's not too late, and it's certainly not too late for Carson Beck. I mean, you've got the spotlight now. If you're Georgia, you've got the Ole Miss game now. You had Mizzou last week. You'll have Tennessee on CBS. I mean, last week, 7 million people watched Georgia beat Missouri. How many people will watch Ole Miss Georgia? It'll probably want to be one of the most broadcast games in cable history for Ole Miss. For Georgia, obviously not, because they play the playoff games there. But it should be 5 to 7 million people that watch this game. That's a huge audience for Mississippi. So, but I think all that said, if Georgia just does what they always do, and they don't include turnovers in that, they're going to win this game. I mean, I would be flabbergasted if they lost this game without Ole Miss getting turnovers. Now, that said, they're pretty good at getting turnovers, Ole Miss. I mean, they're top 10 in the country at that. So that's a concern. I think for me, the bigger concern is Mississippi's not played well on the road. They just haven't. There's no way to sugarcoat that. It's just what it is. When they played at Alabama, they just didn't play well. Okay, when they played at Auburn, they played fine, but it wasn't anything awe-inspiring. And I think when you look at their game against Tulane, that was a game in the fourth quarter. So is that is that what Georgia is, or is Georgia Tulane? Are they Auburn, or are they a lot more like Alabama? I would say they're a lot more like Alabama than anywhere. And this is the other thing too. They've only played 2 games over 70,000 people in the seats, and both those times were on the road. They won't play another game like that this season. So this is a real test for them. I'm going to choose to ignore what happened with them against Texas A&M last week. They got out to a lead. It looked like they were on the way, and just to allow a team like Texas A&M that can't seem to get out of its own way to score 35 points. I was not impressed with that at all, but you got to go play the game. And, you just can't tell in this league, Kirby today on Pat McAfee's show was talking about, everybody wants to say something about the SEC. Come on down here and play. No, you don't want to do that. You don't want to do that. You need to stay in the Big Ten where you have 2 huge games a year. You need to stay in the ACC where you have, a game a year, maybe 2 at the most, 1.5. Big 12 where you're playing Baylor and Oklahoma State. Those are like your big games. This league is, it is Casey Kasem. The hits keep on coming, man. Every single week you're going to get it. You will get challenged. You will probably play a ranked team, but you will play games that matter, whether they're rivalries like Auburn, Georgia, and Georgia, Florida, or they're, top 25 teams like Missouri, Ole Miss, next week Tennessee, and a few weeks after that, in theory, if you handle business, Alabama. Nobody plays like this. And nobody in this league, with the exception of Alabama in the last 5 years, and LSU in 2019, has been like Georgia has lately, which is a team that really, it's like paint, man. Like they're getting 3 coats on every single game. Like it's hard to find spots. You can score on them. In fact, you probably will score on the first drive, but man, if you don't, you better start packing a lunch, man, because then you're looking for a long day at that point. So I like Georgia's chances here. I don't see any particular thing. If they slow down the run game for Ole Miss, which I don't think is asking too much, then the Rebels are really in for a long day. I think for Georgia, I was talking to Nazir after the game last week, and I said I hate to be the guy that brings this up with all your adulation here, scoring the touchdown and everything, but y'all allowed 140 yards rushing or whatever it was, and he immediately he realized we got to get that right. This is the number 14 run defense in the country, Georgia. They're allowing 100 yards a game, and a lot of that was bumped up after a few of those yards were bumped up after last week. That's not going to work for this weekend. If Ole Miss gets to 130, 140 yards, then they're going to have a legitimate. It's going to be a legitimate game late in the game. Now, Ole Miss can't come in here and turn it over. And that's one thing that's been a problem for them. Jackson Dart's been 3 touchdowns, 3 interceptions on the road. That's not going to work. You look at his splits during road and away. He's hitting 8% fewer passes. Like it all adds up, y'all. The penalties, the interceptions, the lack of third down, going up against a really good third down team in Georgia. It's a problem. And so, I just, when you're at 30, when you're number 96 in the country in third down conversion at 36%, and you're going against somebody who's at 27%, they're probably going to yank you down even lower because you're playing on the road. You're playing a really good team. If Ole Miss converts, honestly, if Ole Miss converts 1 every 3 third downs, they're really doing well against Georgia. They're not bad. I think on fourth down they're like at 71%, so that's really high. But I'm going to ask you now. Lane will do it, but you really want to roll the dice against these guys? Hugh Freeze did it, and that was a mistake, and it really hurt Auburn in that game. I said Hugh Freeze. I meant Billy Napier. That was a mistake. I think actually Hugh did it as well, and Georgia turned them away. So I like the Dogs here. I think they'll cover. We're gonna see, but I just know in this league you just can't ever know for sure what's going to happen, and that's the real problem. Is you can watch the teams play, you can look at numbers and so forth, but what you don't know is how are they playing that day? Are there turnovers? Is there going to be weather? Stuff like that you don't, as a person who covers the team, I can't know how they're going to be in these moments. They have to go out and do it. Now, the good news is, for those of us who will be on the field, it appears that it won't be super rainy when we play, because I'm not about that life. I'm just going to let you know that right now. I can live in the 50s. That's fine. But 50s and rain, or just rain, and it makes my job a lot harder, a lot more miserable, really, more than anything. And I think that if we can avoid that and get these two teams just playing a normal game, no slop or anything like that, that'd be really good. I know this. The turf folks at Georgia, they do a really good job. That field plays clean all the time. It's beautiful. Now, we're getting in the middle of November here, so that's the hard part. But it looks great all the time. I think in terms of just the field, you're fortunate you're not playing a game against Georgia Tech 2 weeks after this. But I think that it's all there for Georgia right now. Everything about this season is in front of them, and they can get where they got to go by winning this week. Really gets them even more margin for error. If this is going to come down to, do they beat Alabama and Atlanta or not? Right now, I'd say they will. But, the more you win, the more you give yourself a chance to, if something really wild happens, that you can recover from it. But I'm not sure we're going to see that in college football anytime soon. But we'll see.